So I decided that I was going to be a teacher because that would be super easy. Not so much. I taught high school English for 3 years. I really, really, really loved it. I loved my kids. I loved the books I was teaching. Later on, you guys want to meet in the cafe and we can talk about Macbeth. I'm totally down for that. I will teach you everything. All the blood symbolism will be there. But it wasn't quite right. It just wasn't quite the right fit for me. It's like kids and books, yay! Grading and state bureaucracy, boo. So it just wasn't quite the right fit. And that's when I decided, again, it was yet again time to say deuces. And I did that and I quit my job teaching for all sorts of reasons. And I was like, I'm going to write a book. This is going to work out. It's still to this day, and this is 5 years later, it's insane to me that this actually worked out. But it did. I quit my job in October, and I sat down to write a book. I'd never finished a book before. I was really, really good at starting books. Oh man, I could start the crap out of a book. But then I'd write like 10 to 20,000 words, and I was like, oh, this is hard, not fun anymore. This book must be bad, I'll do something else. And what I've discovered now after writing so many books is that actually not all books feel like that. You get to a point where you're like, this is hard, and I don't want to do it anymore, but I got to pay my rent, so I probably should. But anyway, I had never tried a young adult novel before, but because I'd been teaching, my kids had been bringing in tons of books for me to read. And when I started reading YA, I was like, oh, okay, this I can write. This sounds like me. I'm forever 16 in my own head. So I sat down to write Hex Hall, and I knew when I wanted to write that book, I knew that I wanted to do something that was scary, because again, with Catherine Tucker Wyndham and the Jeffrey, I was into the scary stuff. I knew that I wanted to do something with boarding schools, because I like the idea of boarding school. I think boarding school in real life would have killed me dead, but I really like the idea of it. Also, if you've ever noticed, there's a lot of boarding school stories in YA, and there's a lot of orphans. It's because we don't want to write about parents. I'm going to be really honest with you. Like, it's just, like, parents are like the ultimate, like, blocker to you doing cool things in books. Like, I don't let my kid ride his bike to the end of the street. He's certainly not fighting the Dark Lord of Evil. That sounds really dangerous. So new boarding school, I wanted something kind of light and funny. I had been reading a lot of YA. I'd been reading a fair amount of funny YA. There's a lot of it out there. But I'd also been reading a lot where I felt like everything was just like really serious all the time, especially in the romance department. There seemed to be so much that was like, I saw you from across the room, and I don't know why, but I would die for you now. And it was like, whoa, just maybe like make out a little bit first. Like, just settle down. Like, there's no need to die for people yet. So I wanted something that was like a little bit like countering that. So with all that in mind, I wrote Hex Hall. I wrote Hex Hall between October and February. So I quit my job in October, and then I spent the next few months writing that book. And then I was lucky enough to get a literary agent, who's actually here tonight. What's up, Holly? And she liked my book, and I was pretty psyched. And then she was able to sell it to my publisher, to Disney Hyperion, in April. So literally, again, it blows my mind, and I never stop being grateful for it. Like October, rock bottom, unemployed, grad school went kerplooey, might starve. Also had baby, I had like a 1.5-year-old at home, so that too. Husband also quit job, so rock bottom. April, 6 months later, oh, dream job. Oh well, thanks, that worked out well then. That was quite the rocket ride there. And so I was very, very fortunate, and it's allowed me to do all the things that I loved in teaching. Again, talking to kids, talking about books, without any of the stuff that I didn't like very much. So yeah, I had the Hex Hall series, which is 3 books, Hex Hall, Demon Glass, and Spellbound. Spellbound came out last year. This is it. It's pretty. And then I wrote School Spirits, which is a spin-off, because if you've read the Hex Hall series, people ask me, like, why a spin-off? Why not another Hex Hall book? Sophie needed a vacation, y'all. Like, I don't know if you read that last book, but like, she needed to like go sit on a beach and chill out, and I didn't need to mess up her life anymore. I had messed up her life enough, and I'd sort of put it back together for her. So it was time to mess up someone else's life. And I also liked the idea of taking the Brannocks, who are a family we mentioned in the Hex Hall series, who are monster hunters. In Hex Hall, we're always following the monsters, if we want to use that, the prodigium, if we want to use my pretentious made-up word for them. But it was nice to sort of, I liked the idea of like someone coming from just a totally different viewpoint into the Hex Hall world. So School Spirits follows 15-year-old Izzy Brannock, who has been a monster hunter her whole life. If you've seen like the TV show Supernatural, Yeah, which I love. Everywhere I go, people are like losing it for Supernatural. I was like, who knew? Which I love. I wish they'd stop killing ladies. They really need to stop killing ladies on that show. But other than the misogyny aspect, I really, really liked the idea of like that they sort of are nomadic and they travel, and it means that their family is very tight because they have to travel all over together and kill monsters. But it's also incredibly dysfunctional in the way that a family that's very tight-knit and isolated from other people would be. And so that was kind of the genesis of School Spirits. Also, this book was fun because in it, Izzy has to go to high school for the first time, and like real high school, which she's been like homeschooled and never had to deal with like things like prom and lockers and bell schedules and all that kind of thing. So that was a lot of fun too, to like how would high school look to someone who's never been to a regular high school. And so one of the ideas that I had is that Izzy tries to find out by watching incredibly bad like CW-esque teen soap opera. It's a soap opera in the book called Ivy Springs that literally my editor was like, you have got to stop making the Ivy Springs jokes because they're only funny a little bit, but you're making like 500 of them. This is why I have an editor, because I am self-indulgent. But anyway, so she watches that kind of thing. She's reading magazines. She's trying to figure out, and I loved that idea of a girl who is incredibly physically capable. This is a girl who can kill monsters. But a boy asked for her phone number, and she's like, what is that about? So that was a lot of fun to write. So that is School Spirits. That's me. That's the Hex Hall series. I think we've covered my origin story, as it were. So if you guys have any questions before I start selling some books, I am more than happy to answer them.